They drifted away from the main collection of activity, and Tiz led him up a no longer moving escalator. Her chatter resumed, turning to check on him every so often. Spiridon traced his lip as he listened to her, remembering the information his father had told him about the place too, and he wished he wasn't here alone. His cheeks still stung and throbbed beneath the now dried goo someone had put on it, and weariness came over him as if he'd been awake all day.
Will I eventually get to see William Whiskey?
Yeah. Not till later, though. He's with Storm right now. My dad said he had to talk with Whiskey as well, and then they were heading to the surface.
Who's Storm?
One of the Blue Boys.
Are they really all boys?
Tiz placed her hand on her hips and walked as if she were in charge of the place.
No, they're not. There are,
She counted on her fingers, then licked one and tapped her nose.
There are 3 females in Froxen Blue, but I think they like pretending they're boys. Well, I don't know about Paige. I guess she's not boy or girl. She's just been made to look like a girl.
What?
Spiridon scurried closer as a large man with a gadget-laden top hat trundled past.
How does that work?
She was made. She's a machine. I can't remember what country she's from, though.
For a moment, the girl stopped to stare up at 3 dancers who hung from the ceiling, and Spiridon felt his jaw drop, again. The 3 women were tantalizingly beautiful, their bodies pinched in corsets and limbs wrapping around the metal hoops they were suspended in. They reminded Spiridon of circus girls. In fact, perhaps that's what they were, and each moved as if the clanging music was the most sensual sound they had ever heard. Tiz led him to the 3rd floor and then leaned over the glass banister as best she could.
Okay. There are 9 sectors in Froxen Underground. I don't know where they all lead, though, so don't go wandering where you shouldn't.
Spiridon draped over the banister beside her and grinned, his eyes drawn all over the place.
I promise.
She began pointing to different corridors below and around them, making the place seem to resemble a spider.
Down that walkway and along a bit is Sector 0. We don't really include it in the count because it's the steam room. Jim does most of her work down there, but mind, it's off limits to everyone.
Tiz gave him a smarmy look.
Even the Blue Boys have a hard time getting in. She likes her own space.
Wait, she? Okay. Well, what does she do?
She breaks and fixes stuff, I think. And she keeps an eye on some of the power generators for Froxen Underground. She's pretty nifty. I like her. I don't think my dad does, though.
Why not?
Spiridon felt compelled to flick black-brown hair from her face, and Tiz shook her head to ruffle it back.
Who knows? He says she's too cocky. I think she's pretty smart.
Hey, Tiz, I'm kinda hungry,
he said, feeling bad to change the subject.
Is there anywhere we can eat something?
He looked over the food below and wondered which was safe to eat.
Sure, follow me. We'll go see Tixie.
With a bounce in her step, Tiz headed to a shop that used to sell scarves. The brand name had been tarnished with running black paint that said, "The Tixie and Topper Residence." As they entered, Spiridon noticed 5 groups of people huddled in different areas, scarves all over the floor like a blanket, and he almost felt bad for stepping on them until he realised the majority were already foot-beaten grey. The place was hot and like a nest.
That's the Topper family.
She pointed to the top right and waved.
That's the Miller family. Then there was the Amber kids. And this is the Cog family.
Tiz sauntered over to the far left.
Hey, Tixie!
A middle-aged woman turned from her bubbling pot of what smelt like porridge. It appeared to be set over a small metal grill, steam rising through the holes. He noticed that the 3 other groups of people in this room had steam grates too, which explained to Spiridon why it was so warm.
Ah, Tiz, here you are. I was beginning to wonder what kept you so long.
That's when Tixie's eyes found Spiridon, and she seemed to understand, gasped, and shifted her position to face him better.
Hello?
Spiridon scratched the back of his neck and decided to wait for an invitation to approach any closer.
Hello?
Tixie was wearing a loose white shirt clamped in by a corset around her waist. Long tassels of cord hung from her neck and wrists where the shirt was tightened, and as she straightened out a leg, he noted her trousers were tightly fitted.
You must be the son of the inventor.
Yes.
Are you hungry? We haven't eaten dinner either yet. Perhaps you'd like to join us. Although it's party day today, I'm afraid. It's due tomorrow, though.
If that would be okay, I wouldn't mind joining you today.
Spiridon glanced over at the two boys who sat sleeping in the corner, perhaps the same age as Tiz. Tiz crawled across the scarf-strewn floor toward them. Then she pounced and tickled them all over. The two boys yelled in alarm and kicked out, continuing to yell even after Tiz had pulled away. She cackled at their reaction. One of the boys grabbed Tiz by the front of her top and scolded her for waking them in such a way, but Tiz's smile didn't fail for a second, and the boys eventually eased off.
Maybe if you wasn't so lazy, I wouldn't have to wake you. What hour do you call this?
She looked up at Spiridon, who still stood out of place, and beckoned to him.
Come, sit down. These are Tixie's sons. Mr. Cog will be back soon.
Spiridon moved away from Tixie Cog and sat behind Tiz, feeling safer now the wall was at his back and he had a full view of the room. He didn't say another word unless Tiz spoke to him, and when the boy's father came back, the family ate in never-ending conversation that Spiridon was rarely able to follow. He let his mind wander instead, thinking of the woman who had burst open his cell and tugged him from the rotting floor last night. Spiridon did not remember her face, it had been too dark, and the flying hat she wore was all he could define in his memories. Without realising, he made a small noise of annoyance at recalling how she had called him kid. She was rough for a woman, and snarky too, and he wondered if the mechanic Tiz had described was the same person. After all, she had done something to get that bike working when half the fens on ship hadn't managed.
You alright there, son?
Mr. Cog asked.
You're looking preoccupied.
Spiridon played with his neckline and apologised. Soon Tiz said she needed to run the rest of her errands for the day and grappled to her feet.
Thanks, Tixie. And see you soon, Mr. Cog. Better not keep Angelo waiting. I hear he's got imports smuggling in today.
Well, you mind yourself, Miss Tiz. Don't go running into trouble. I don't trust them fens.
Yeah, Mr. Cog, nor does anyone else. But if Jim will let them deliver stuff to our lair, then I ain't afraid neither. I could do down anyone. You know, I saw Morgan, Amos, and Gabriel taking a huge box to her today, I did. She had a right hissy. She told them she didn't order no smuggled bike parts. She wouldn't let them step a toe over the door line.
As she mentioned those three male names, something inside Spiridon went very cold. They did not question Spiridon when he got up to follow Tiz, though she looked surprised. And he waited until they had moved away from the old scarf shop to speak.
Hey, Tiz,
He touched her shoulder and bent towards her ear.
did you say you were friends with the mechanic?
What?
She stopped and turned to face him, making Spiridon fidget like he was doing something wrong. No one paid him attention, but he felt compelled to hide the back of his hands in his sleeves.
The mechanic from Froxen Blue. Didn't you say you were friends?
Well, no, not really. I just like her and she likes me.
Oh,
Tiz folded her arms and raised an eyebrow.
Why?
well,
Spiridon stared at the child's red nose.
how long do you have before you have to see that guy? To do your errands, I mean, how long do you have?
Not long. Why?
Which level are you going to?
Peering down her nose, Tiz ruffled a hand through the back of her short hair.
The ground floor. Why? Are you asking if you can go see her?
Well, pretty much.
Tiz laughed like this was a good joke and rubbed her nose.
Ha! Not a chance. You ain't getting me to knock on a door.
I'll do it myself. But can you point it out again while we're up here on the top floor?
Are you crazy? You need a passcode anyway. And I ain't speaking.
Spiridon placed his hand on her shoulder and the girl sucked in her lips, staring at him with huge brown eyes. Her gaze wandered down his neck and Spiridon knew that Tiz could see down his top, could see the black script that was written all over his chest.
I need to talk to her because I can't find something of mine. It's very important. Please give me the code.
With a dramatic, condescending sigh, Tiz found it hard to look away from him.
What'll you give me in return? You don't get something for nothing here. Come on, information for...
With a winning smirk, she raised her nose again. Spiridon faltered, realising he had nothing to give, and hung his head, hands still on Tiz's shoulders. Maybe he should return to his room and wait until William came to see him, but he didn't want to sit there doing nothing for hours. Perhaps he could go and see that Cedric instead. His father had always had a liking for him. But for some reason, Spiridon was a lot more curious about the mechanic. He had to tell her he wasn't a kid, and he wanted to ask her what was happening.
What about this? What is it?
Tiz reached forward for his waist, and he lurched back. She grabbed a grey square bit of material from his pocket and held it before her face, running her fingers and thumbs over the smooth surface.
It's a bandana. Would you like it?
I don't know, what do you do with it?
Spiridon took it from her and tied it around her head in a fashion that made her seem less boyish.
You wear it like this.
Tiz touched her head and felt the knot that tied it in place. When she grinned and agreed to tell him the code, Spiridon's stomach clenched with rebellious anticipation.